everything is connected. So your personal finances, your business finances, if you're lacking in one area, if your business is doing really well, but your personal side of things isn't, it all ties together and affects each other. So really looking at everything from like a big picture view and seeing how everything is connected can help people get ahead.
100%. So today we're going to talk about why we decided to start Thorne Advisors. I think there's numerous reasons why, but what we truly came back to is we saw a gap in the market. We knew that most places just offered tax prep, but we saw that people really needed tax strategy. And in order to do tax strategy, they needed cash. So Andrea and I got together and we were like, what can we do to truly offer what people need? And that's how Thorne Advisors was born. How do you even get started in this space?
So I worked in public accounting for about 10 years. And one of the biggest problems I noticed in public accounting was clients were just being passed around from tax manager to tax manager. And we were just preparing people's taxes and not really getting to know them, what their goals were, what they were ultimately working towards. And I thought that we could come together and really serve people well, look at their life and try to add value and strategize based on how they were living their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the tricky thing in this space is that often everybody wants to replicate that accounting firm model. And really, we need to be people focused first. And I think that's where most accounting firms get it wrong. I know coming out of public accounting and doing the audit side of the world, it really lacked the people part. And what I recognized, what kind of set me apart in that world was that I recognized there was a person on the other end of these procedures I was telling them to do. And I think that's kind of what we're doing here, where we're marrying the two things. Like we know facts, which are the financials, what their situation is, but we're marrying it with like, what are you trying to do with your life? And I think there's a huge benefit to having more of the conversation centered around where the business is going and how can tax support that versus just being something we have to pay.
Right. We also noticed that everyone that wanted to do tax strategy, they didn't always have the cash to be able to take advantage of the tax strategies that were out there. And so what we do is we go into the business and look around, find those hidden cash leaks and say, how can we take the cash that you do have, or where can we find the missing cash? And then deploy these tax strategies so you're not paying everything to the IRS every April.
For sure. And I think we work so hard to generate the revenue. We want to keep as much as possible. And I think there's just a gap with the professionals you need in your life. And I feel like we kind of bridge that and we provide this service where you get business strategy alongside tax strategy, which is like obviously needed and very specialized. But then you have somebody who is money informed, making and giving you advice on like business strategy decisions as well as like operational efficiencies. And I just don't think people do it like we do it. And that's why we're so confident in why and how we can help people is because we do it in our business first, and then we are doing it in other people's businesses too. So, I mean, my background in itself was audit. And so when I came into the online space, I said I was absolutely not going to do business strategy. I was not even looking at the accounting firm side of things. But what I started to realize is even when I helped people with their personal finances, I was teaching them how to grow their money so that they could do more with it personally. And most of the time it was helping them strategically build out their business to do it. And so then I like dabbled into the business strategy piece. And then I was looking at numbers, and numbers were informing the advice I was giving. And I was like, there really should be people that do this. And then when we started talking about it, I think at first it was like, you really need somebody to help you, Andrea, that can do it. And then you were like, you really need to be the person that helps me do it.
Yeah. And everything is connected. So your personal finances, your business finances, if you're lacking in one area, if your business is doing really well, but your personal side of things isn't, it all ties together and affects each other. So really looking at everything from like a big picture view and seeing how everything is connected can help people get ahead.
100%. And I feel like we are a product of the offer we give to our clients, because the whole reason that we have a relationship is that I came in and I was helping you build out like your offer suite and how you were going to serve clients. And I think being a product of the product is very helpful because it shows you what you can really do with things. And so let's talk a little bit about like how we came up with the name Thorne, because that was part of the work we were doing together originally.
Right. So in 2022, my dad passed away unexpectedly, and I was starting to get clients to do tax and tax strategy while I was working in public accounting. And after this happened, I really decided to go all in with my business. I realized that life is super short, and I also wanted to honor his legacy and make sure that the name continued on and just showed, life is short, to take risks and to go after your dreams and also try to serve people and do it well.
Yeah. And I feel like it couldn't have been a more perfect name for the company, because our ultimate goal is not just to help you keep cash today, but really like thinking about what are we doing in the long term? How are we planning for it? And how can we use what you're doing today to serve you tomorrow? And I think that is kind of like, if you asked us what our unique selling point is, that's it. Like, we understand that the people matter, their goals matter, and every decision we're making or scenario we're running goes back to what this person wants ultimately.
And their purpose. Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about who we serve and why we started this podcast.
So mainly we serve branding agencies, marketing agencies that are making about 2 million usually. And they're really in the space of like, they have the cash, they have the availability, but they are either paying an enormous amount of taxes, and then they can't use that money to continue to grow and scale. And so we found that there were common things that happened in every single agency that we knew we could jump in and support them, like their pricing. Often they were not considering the cost of turning the lights on every day. So projects that looked profitable on paper were not actually profitable at the end of the day. And then those profit suckers were really bringing down the overall margin for everything else. And then on paper, they look successful. And then in reality, all their cash goes to pay taxes.
Right. Almost 50% of their cash.
Yeah.
Also, what we were finding was they were taking out all of the cash from the business because they thought they had made a ton, transferring it to their personal account. And then April came around and there was nothing left to pay their tax bill.
Yeah.
So just looking ahead, telling them, in August, before even the end of the year, what they're going to owe in taxes really helped them plan ahead and come up with a way to make sure that they're paid and paid on time.
Yeah. And I think another thing with agency owners, a lot of them will build it out, they started to kind of crack the code of having people do the things for them. And now they're kind of like, I got this money and I have more time. Where can I go put that money to make it grow? Or what's this like new endeavor I want to try? And what we found is like that happens a lot. And running scenarios of like, hey, if you invest in real estate, this is what it looks like. If you're going to invest in a gym, this is what it looks like. Or if you want to just pay yourself more and go on vacation, this is what it looks like. And I think all of those are very valid scenarios that I think often we just make those decisions on a whim and we don't consider the financial impact of them.
Right.
And I think that's where tax strategy comes into play so much, is that you can really be able to plot out the decisions and know and predict how much you're going to pay in taxes.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that agency owners were coming across once they hit, I would say over $1 million, is their tax situations were starting to get complicated.
Mm-hmm.
They were in multiple states. They didn't know which states they would have to pay sales tax in, which states they need to file income taxes for. And they were sitting there trying to put it into AI, figure out what they need to do on the tax side of things. But they were spending all of their time doing this instead of running the business.
Yeah.
Because messing this up could put them potentially out of business.
For sure.
But us being able to take that off of their plate so that they could really focus on building, that was a game changer for a lot of our clients.
And in that same light, I think too, what we do differently is having that cash flow piece. In order for me to be able to determine where the cash is leaking in your business, I need to understand your business. And with that understanding of the business, I'm able to be like, no, that tax strategy is not going to work for them because of X or Y. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it eliminates that middleman of having the business owner trying to translate what their tax person's telling them to their CFO, to their bookkeeper, and so on and so forth. Whereas we can have those conversations in-house and present and shortcut them to the decision that they're trying to make, versus making them do all the laps of trying to figure out all the logistics behind it. Because I do think there's such a benefit for me to understand how they do business, because it makes such a difference in what solutions we provide them.
Yeah. And we've been doing it for so long. Mm-hmm. We can look at someone's financials and tell them immediately what sticks out.
For sure. And that's why I often will ask to look at your financials before we get started, because I can look at a balance sheet and tell you right off the bat if you need your books cleaned up. I can look at your profit and then look at your cash and be like, yeah, you have a problem here. And those things, I feel like having those expert eyes really makes such a difference. And I think what we decided to do when we started Prosper and Get Paid Playbook is we wanted to have an opportunity to help all business owners, right? Not just the ones we serve within the firm. And I think the biggest thing we recognized is pretty much all of these to-dos that we give our business owners are things you can do at every income level, but you might not have the money to invest like you would with higher profit. So we decided this Prosper and Get Paid podcast was going to be our opportunity to talk to that business owner that is thinking about tax strategy and maybe not ready for it quite yet, or they know they have a cash flow issue, but they kind of just need some like conversation around it to be able to self-identify too.
Right. And just giving people education and teaching them financial literacy, it can really help your business, even if you're just starting out, to understand these little tips and tricks about tax and cash flow.
Yeah. And I think foundationally, having starting to think about this from the beginning is going to serve you at every single level. And I think most of the time when business owners are starting out or they're starting to get traction in the growing and scaling, they're so focused on revenue, they're not focused on keeping their money. And then they find themselves in situations come tax time or an opportunity arises and they don't have the money to actually invest in it.
Or trying to get a loan and you don't have clean financials. So this is really our effort, or we're trying to help people be prepared for these different types of things when they are growing their business.
And we have a heart for small business owners because we are. And so we try to make it our business to know what people need to know so we can talk about these things, because I don't think we all... there's no real space to have these types of conversations. And people get weird when you start talking about money. I was at a networking event and I was just like, oh, what's your net income? And like, they kind of like looked at me, big eyes, because I'm like, oh, I talk about this all day, every day. I'm not judging you. I just need to know what it is so I can tell you what I think you should do. But I think it can be a taboo topic and it can make people super uncomfortable. And we kind of want to like destigmatize talking about money, especially as women. I feel like women often feel like there's a code in which we should do things. And it really stunts our growth sometimes, because if we only had more conversations like, hey, when is the right time to be an S Corp? Or, hey, have you looked at your pricing? Have you considered that your overhead's really high? Like, we could progress as a collective a lot faster.
Yeah, definitely. And you need to be able to voice these things and say what you want. I met with a client before and I asked her, what was her revenue goal, or what net income did she ultimately want to get to? And she just looked super embarrassed. And she was like, honestly, I've never said this out loud and I feel so weird saying it. And it was just to me, there wasn't anybody else around. And it makes me sad that women or other business owners, they can't say what they want, but you can't reach a goal where you can't vocalize where you're trying to get to.
For sure. And I think too, it's having women in the accounting seat makes such a difference, because I think it's a very male dominated industry. And there's just something we can bring to the table that simply being a woman and a mother, and also just like recognizing people like innate needs, we can meet them there alongside some very practical needs like telling you to fix your pricing or
you know. And we're not afraid to call people out and call clients out.
Lovingly.
Tell them how it is.
Lovingly.
Yeah.
I think the thing that has been the most discouraging for me when I do sales calls is just recognizing the responsibility people do not take when they sit in our seat. I think that's the one thing that we do differently is like we recognize that it's hard to talk about money. It's hard to trust somebody with something you don't really understand. So I feel like we really take responsibility for that and show up in a way so that you feel comfortable and confident. And I pretty much how we do business is built around knowing that this is a very sensitive topic for people. So like, you know, when we do certain things like getting in touch with people within 24 to 48 hours, like that's like unheard of in our industry.
Yeah. And at least sending a response, even if we don't have the answer right away, we still let clients know, hey, we'll look into it. We'll get back to you within the next day.
And I feel like something for you being the tax expert that you are, what do you think is something that is being sold to a lot of people that is just like inaccurate when it comes to tax strategy?
I hear everyone selling the Augusta rule and it takes that CPA 5 minutes. They don't give them any documentation for if they get audited, and they pay $10K for a tax plan when the CPA didn't do any work.
For sure.
So,
What about the overpromising?
the overpromising?
Like the crazy write-offs?
Yeah, the crazy write-offs. It could put you at risk for a huge audit.
For sure.
It's not realistic. And then they promise that you're not going to pay any tax at all.
Well, and even in that same vein, like they don't understand your goals. So they're going to make you look like you have no net income and you need to get a loan next week. And I feel like those are like the red flags or the blind spots that happen with other firms that we try to have built our system around so that those things don't happen.
Right. They're not looking at the bigger picture of your life and saying, okay, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years?
For sure.
Let's help you get there and let's plan your tax strategy based off of that.
Yeah, because I think, we would be doing a big disservice just planning for this year and not thinking about what this year means to the bigger picture.
Right.
Especially because we understand that most business owners become business owners to build wealth and legacy. And if you don't have both of those things in mind, we would not be the people to partner with, right?
Right.
We're so excited for this podcast and just having the opportunity to have conversations around when it's time to become an S Corp, when you need tax strategy, when cash flow analysis is really going to support you, and all things of like building wealth and legacy. And if today you need help with your tax strategy, you're struggling with cash flow, you should reach out and book a call with us.
So we'll see you in the next episode.